What's up, guys? It's the Dominique Denise, your favorite model coach. And today we will be talking about the different types of turns that you can add to your runway walk and how to master them. But before we get started, make sure to hit the subscribe button and turn on the bell icon so you always get a notification every time I post a video, which is every other Thursday. Now let's dive into today's topic. Before I start talking about the different types of turns that you can do on the runway, I want to make sure that you guys understand the basics of runway in general. If you haven't seen it already, I want you to check out this video here where I go over Runway 101, how to walk like a runway model. Everything you need to know from a basic general perspective on the ins and outs of runway. But what's the purpose of runway turns? Why would we even do them in the first place? The whole point of a runway show is to show off what a garment would actually look like, especially when movement is added to it. Turns allow you to show off additional features of the garment that a lone walk could not otherwise showcase. Another reason why you'd want to utilize runway turns is if you're being asked to freestyle or show off what you can do on the runway. But today I'll be showing you guys 5 different runway turns that fall into 3 different categories. The first category is turns that you do at the very beginning of the runway, before you start walking. The only turn that we will ever do on the beginning of the runway is a 3/4 turn. Now for the second category. The second category is turns that you do in the middle of the runway. So not the beginning, not the very end, but somewhere in the middle. The 3 turns that we can utilize on the middle of the runway are pivots, also called half turns, full turns, and a walking turn. And the third final category and 5th final turn that we'll be talking about today, the category is turns that we do on the very end of the runway, and that turn is a 1.5. A 1.5 is the only turn besides a back step that we will do at the very end of a runway. And if you don't know what a back step is, then make sure you check out that Runway 101 How to Walk Like a Runway Model video. And before we dive into the actual turns themselves and start practicing them, here's a tip for your shoes as you practice your turns. If your shoes have too much friction on them, therefore making it very difficult for you to even turn at all, find some scotch tape or some masking tape and just put it diagonally across the toe of your shoe. If your shoe becomes too slippery by adding this tape and you're turning too fast now, too much, then just use a smaller piece of tape. Now, if your shoes are just too slippery, period, they came that way, we need to scuff them up a little bit to give you a little more friction so you're not slipping, sliding all over the runway. My tip for that is to grab either sandpaper or a nail file and just slightly scuff up the bottom of your shoes. Now let's start with the one and only turn that we will ever do on the beginning of the runway, our 3/4 turn. If you recall in my Basics of Runway video, you always want to start walking in model stance. The 3/4 turn is just a fancy way of entering the runway and getting into model stance. And this turn is only 3/4 of a turn. Remember, 270 degrees. So if you find yourself doing more than a full turn, then you are facing the wrong way. Here's a tip on how to figure out which way you need to face so that way you end your 3/4 turn facing the front of the runway. You want to put your left arm forward and your right arm out. Your left arm represents the direction in which you should start your 3/4 turn. Your right arm represents the direction you would like to face when you finish your turn. To make sure that you are facing the correct direction to end your turn facing the front of the runway, you want to turn your body until your right arm is facing the front of the runway. The direction your left arm is facing is the direction in which you need to stand to start your turn. You want to take your right foot, cross it over your left, and go on your toes and turn until you are facing the front of the runway. If your feet are hitting each other while you're turning, try crossing your left foot over more so there's a larger space between your left and your right foot so they do not hit each other when you turn. Once finished turning, your feet should end in model stance. You want to start walking with your front foot as to not trip yourself. Now let's talk about the turns that we do in the middle of the runway, starting with pivots, also called half turns. One way to think of pivots or half turns is kind of like a twist. So let's break that down. As you're walking, you'll end up stepping forward with your right foot. You'll then twist both of your feet so your body rotates to the left 180 degrees. Then you'll repeat this process to turn back around to the front of the runway. So right foot, step forward, twist, right foot, step forward, twist. Again, make sure to start walking with your front foot as to not trip ourselves. Now let's talk about the full turn, also done in the middle of the runway. The full turn is very similar to the 3/4 turn, except now you're going a full circle, a full 360 degrees. As you're walking, you'll take your right foot and you'll cross it over your left, go on your toes, and turn all the way around. You'll most likely end up with your legs crossed. And that is okay. Just shift your weight to your back foot so you can easily pick up your front foot to start walking again without tripping yourself. And the last turn that we do in the middle of the runway is our walking turn. The walking turn is basically a twirl. And I'm sure all of us have twirled at some point in our lives, whether we've realized it or not. But all you want to do is just one twirl moving forward. If you break it down, as you're walking, you'll step to the side with your right foot, then you'll turn around to the other side with your left foot, then you'll step forward with your right foot and continue walking. And now for the very last turn that we'll be talking about, the 1.5. The 1.5 is always done at the very end of the runway, and it replaces your back step. So as you come to the end of the runway, you'll do your 2 poses for 3 seconds each, and then you'll do a 1.5 turn in order to turn back around and walk back down the runway. This turn looks much harder than it actually is. So let's break it down into its component parts. This turn is basically a full turn and a back step combined. So you do your poses, then you do your full turn. Your legs will usually end crossed, and we're going to use this to help us complete our turn. Shift your weight to your back foot if you need to catch your balance. Then after your full turn, take your front leg, which should be your left leg, and swing it out and around to the left and turn to face the back of the runway. Once you master the turn slowly in its component parts, you'll just want to smooth it out so it looks like one move, not 2 separate moves. Now let's practice all these turns together with what I like to call the turns walk. For the turns walk, you start with your 3/4 turn. Then you walk a little bit. Then you do your pivots or half turns. You walk a little bit. Then you do your full turn. Then you finish walking to the end of the runway. You're gonna do your 2 poses, 3 seconds each. Then you'll do your 1.5, so now we face the back of the runway. Now you're gonna walk back down the runway, and on our way back, you'll do a walking turn. And then once you get to the end, you'll do a final pose. Usually you wouldn't put all these turns together in one walk, but we're gonna do so today as it's an easy way to practice all of our turns together. So let's see this walk, shall we? And there you have it, guys. The 5 major turns that you can do on the runway and how to master them. If you guys are having any trouble with your turns or have any questions about the modeling industry, please do not hesitate to reach out to me. As your dedicated model coach, that's what I'm here for. And if you like this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the bell icon so you always get a notification every time I post a video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and I'll see you next time. Have a fantastic rest of your day.